Okay, so now let's continue on our journey. So we had looked at the road ahead, and one of the important components there was to understand all these data choices that we have or different data sources that we have, and then what are the pipelines used for processing this data and how do you mix data and so on, right? And before that, right, I mean, why do we need to scale data, right? So that's something that we'll briefly touch upon, the scaling laws. So let's start with that. So T5 sort of roughly showed us that the performance of the model scales with data, right? So if you have more data, then you'll be able to train better models, and so far the models that we have seen, this is the amount of data that was used for training them. GPT-2, which was a 1.5 billion parameter model, was trained on 19 billion tokens, and T5, which was a 10 billion parameter model, they had several sizes, but one of them was 10 billion parameters, was trained on 175 billion tokens, right? So now the question is it necessary to scale the size of the data even further, and then perhaps scale the size of the model also, right? And if yes, how do we source the data, right? Where do we get more and more tokens coming in, right? And once you start looking at sort of order trillion tokens or the 2 trillion tokens, then you will run into several issues. That even at 175 billion tokens, there was several pre-processing that had to be done, which is about deduplication. Then is there toxicity in the data? Is there bias in the data? And how do we sort of plug all this into our pipeline, data processing pipeline, to sort of address all these issues, right? So now, where does this motivation come from? As I said, partly from the T5 paper, where they had shown that if you want to increase the model size, then the performance increases. But then if you have increasing model size and you're just going to show it the same data again and again, then it does not benefit, right? So that's why we should increase the size of the data. The other important motivation came from the scaling laws paper, and you can click on the blue link here to read the paper, which was like published a few months after T5, right? And what they did is that they gave a neat formula to understand what would be the test loss, right? What would be the loss on the test data as a function of the number of parameters in the model. They only consider the non-embedding parameters, right? So at the input layer, you have the embedding parameters, the word embedding or the token embedding parameters, and then you have all the parameters in the model, right? Which is the attention parameters, the feed-forward network parameters, and multiplied by the number of layers you have, and so on, right? So if you just consider those non-embedding parameters and sort of call them as n, that is the total number of non-embedding parameters, and you have the size of the data set D, then they came up with this relationship between n and d, right? And I'll break down this formula for you, but let's see. So the loss is a function of the number of parameters. This is the test loss. It's a function of the number of parameters in the model and the data size, okay? And NC is a constant that they have chosen, right, which is 88 trillion parameters, sort of some sort of a upper bound you can think of, and DC is also a constant which they have chosen, which is 54 trillion tokens, and alpha D is some constants that they have arrived at, right? And this, all these numbers they have arrived at sort of through some empirical experiments, and sort of, not, I wouldn't say proved, but demonstrated in the paper that this formula sort of works, right? So it's a good estimate of the test loss, of the relationship between the test loss and the number of parameters, which is n, and the data set size, which is d, and everything else here is a constant, right? NC, DC, alpha n, alpha d, everything is a constant, and these constants have been estimated empirically, right? So this is the formula that they gave, and as you can see, this is like a scaling formula, because as n increases, what happens, as d increases, what happens, right? So they define this as the scaling law. Now suppose we have a model with 100 million parameters, right, and a data set with 10 million tokens. What will be the training loss? With 100 million parameters and only 10 million tokens, of course the model will drive the training loss to 0, right? You could overfit on the training data, but then what would the test law be, right? The test loss would depend on the scaling law, which we saw on the previous slide and repeated here. So you can just substitute those values. So this was the constant which I had shown on the previous slide. This was also a constant. All the powers 0.8 and this 0.095 is also constants. And in the denominator you have n, which is 100 million, so 100 into 10 raised to 6, and the data, which is 10 into 10 raised to 6 tokens, right? And if you plug in these numbers, you get the answer as 4.36. So this is what your test loss is going to be. So now if you want to reduce the test loss, what should you do? You should either increase the number of tokens or should you change n, right? Because the loss depends on n and d. So what happens, right? So let's see that. So we'll try to draw this cartoon here. So here let me just check. Yeah, so this is the model size is 100 million parameters. So we have fixed the model size as 100 million parameters. Now what happens if I increase the amount of training data? So this is 10 million tokens and I'll keep moving it so that it increases in sizes of 10 million. So you can see that given the model size, after a point my test loss is going to sort of saturate, right? It will decrease initially, so that means 10 million tokens is not enough. I could have gotten a smaller test loss by choosing a slightly larger number of tokens, right? So at least at say, yeah, once I reach, oops, sorry, there's some error. So you can see that around 200 million tokens, right? Yeah, I think roughly 200 million tokens. You sort of get a test loss which is 2.93, and after that, as you keep increasing the number of tokens, you don't really get much benefit, right? So because the model is not capable. Now let's see if we increase the model size, right? So what happens if you increase the model size to, this was 100 million parameters, I'll make it 1 billion parameters, okay? And now let me just reset, and now I will start increasing the number of tokens, and now you can see that with this model size I'm able to draw the loss further down, and even as I increase up to 600 million tokens, I still sort of keep decreasing the loss, but then it sort of saturates, right? So that's what happens with this model size and this data set. So you can see that I can increase the model size and my loss decreases, but I have to also correspondingly increase the data size, because at the beginning both the 100 million parameter with at just 10 million tokens, both the 100 million parameter and the 1 billion parameter were roughly at the same loss, right? Now let me try to increase this further. Let me just make it 10 billion parameters. I hope I'm computing the zeros, calculating the number of zeros properly, but I think this is 10 billion. So now let's see what happens with 10 billion. According to the formula, as I keep increasing, I'm able to go to even smaller losses, right? So now as you keep increasing further, a 100 billion parameter model would benefit from even more training data. Let's see, already it's come down to 2 point something, and you can see, oops, yeah. So that's what roughly it is, and you can see that if I had increased the training data further, it could potentially have gone further down because it's still on a downward slope, right? So that's what the scaling laws tell you. It gives you a formula for deciding that, okay, this is the model size I have chosen because I can afford to train that much size of a model of that much size given the compute that I have and so on. But if I'm going to do that, I better arrange for data which is of a certain size so that my model is efficiently able to use all the data that I have and give me as smaller a test loss as possible, as of course given by the scaling laws, which is an empirical formula. It's not like theoretical, it's not written in stone, but it has empirically been demonstrated that this works, right? So yeah, so this is what we did already. So this motivated the community to both increase the model size, because as I was increasing the model size, I was seeing a smaller test loss, and also increasing the data size, right? So both sort of started happening. So if you scale the parameters of the model, right, what does that mean? Right? You have to increase the number of weights in the model, and like the biological analogy for that is the number of synapses. This is again in the previous deep learning course, we had briefly touched upon this. The human brain has these synapses, neurons connected by synapses, and the equivalent model here is that the weights are sort of the things connecting the two neurons in our neural network, right? So let's look at what happens if you have greater than 10 raised to 6, which is 1 million, then 1 billion, and so on, right? So you keep increasing the number of weights or synapses in the brain. This is what a fruit fly has, this is what a honeybee has, this is what a mouse has, cat, and this is what the human brain has, right? These are the number of connections in each of these organisms. Now if you look at the initial transformer model, which was 400 million parameters, then it lies somewhere between a fruit fly and honeybee. Of course, there's like a cartoonish comparison, not to be taken very literally, but at least gives us a sense of what we are trying to do with size, right? GPT-2 was 1.5 billion parameters, Megatron was 10 billion, then we had GPT-3 which was 175 billion, and then G-Shard and Switch which were trillion parameters. But these trillion parameters, these are sort of mixture of experts, so not all of these parameters are active always. Certain pathways get activated based on the input, right? So this is in effect a bigger model, but it has many parameters, but in effect only a short pathway through the model gets executed, right? And there are rumors that some of the proprietary models are trillions of parameters, of course not substantiated at all, right? So this is what the scaling race looks like in terms of the number of parameters or weights in the model, right? Now let's look at what is happening with the data set, because that also needs to be scaled proportionately, as we saw in that previous plot where we were trying to increase the model size and the data size. So we had this books corpus which was 5 GB in size, then we had Wikipedia which is 21 GB, web text which is 40 GB, real news 110 GB, C4 which is 800 GB, right? So this came around 2020, and while data has been growing, right? So now I'll show you some more points on this diagram. It has been growing, right? And we are at larger sizes now, right? But at the same time, there were also studies which sort of started saying that size is not all that matters, right? So there has to be diversity. So there was this pile corpus which was released, which was 800 GB, but they said that diverse text is very important. It does not make sense to sort of just keep collecting news data, for example, right? Because then it will all look similar and you will not have any proper representation of, say, STEM or other domains, right? Because largely news would have a certain flavor, right? There was also studies which showed that larger data sets were coming out, right, such as RedPajama. And then there were studies which shows that data quality is super important, right? So this was the RefinedWeb corpus, where one of the main contributions was to come up with this very nice pipeline of cleaning the data. So they start with a large amount of data and keep passing it through different stages of cleaning and do a very brutal cleaning to come up with a much smaller subset and sort of make a point that this smaller high quality subset is more useful than just blindly throwing all the data at the model, right? And then there is this similarly work on textbooks are all you need, which again focuses on high quality data, although in this case it was synthetic data, but still high quality data is important. And there is also a study that you don't really need to use proprietary data, open source data, all open source data sources. If you just combine, that's what Llama was trained on. But of course, subsequently Llama 2 has not revealed all the data sources that they used. But at least at that time when Llama was released, it sort of made a case for just publicly available data is good, right? But all of these are like sort of point in time statements, because new work keeps coming and then people show different things. But what is currently clearly accepted is the scale of data is important. The quality of the data is also important, and the diversity of the data is also important. You can just not keep focusing on scale, right? And beyond 2020, more data sets have come out. As I said, the pile data set, which was 800 GB, then the roots corpus, which is from the big science team, Falcon, which was 2.6 TB, then RedPajama 5 TB, and so on, right? Now latest is Dolma from LNAI, which is 11 TB, right? So the data set size is growing, but now post 2023, people have also been focusing on growing the size along with the diversity and the quality of the data, right? So these are the three axes, as I was saying: scale, quality, and diversity, and all of these need to be balanced when we are sort of trying to train with bigger and bigger data sets, right? So this is something that we'll keep repeating, and data curation as well as cleaning pipelines will focus on diversity and quality, right? So if you remember that all the data sets that I had shown at the bottom layer, where you had book corpus, and you also had something known as star coder, which is coding data. So it's a diverse data than what you would see from news. Then there was Wikipedia, and then there was some other sort of data which comes from multiple domains and so on, right? So we'll look at how do we balance for diversity, and how do we create good pipelines which ensure that the data is of high quality. On the web, you will find a lot of objectionable content. You will also find a lot of machine translated content, especially for low resource languages. So all such data needs to be proved out, right? So going forward, what we'll do is we'll look at some data curation pipelines which sort of keep this diagram and the 3 axes in mind, right? So I'll stop here and we'll continue in the next lecture. Thank you.